The Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium strives to provide every student with a positive and productive assessment experience, generating results that are a fair and accurate estimate of each student's achievement. In the process of developing its next generation assessments to measure students' knowledge and skills as they progress toward college and career readiness, Smarter Balanced recognized that the validity of assessment results depends on each and every student having appropriate universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations when needed based on the constructs being measured by the assessment. All students are to be held to the same expectations for participation and performance on the state assessment. Specifically, all students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 are required to participate in the Smarter Balanced Mathematics Assessment, except for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities who meet the criteria for the Mathematics Alternate Assessment based on alternate achievement standards. All students enrolled in grades 3 through 8 and 11 are required to participate in the Smarter Balanced English Language Literacy Assessment, except those students with the most significant cognitive disabilities who meet the criteria for the English Language Literacy Alternate Assessment based on alternate achievement standards. Also exempt from the English Language Literacy Assessment are English language learners who are enrolled for the first year in a United States school. These students should instead participate in the state's English Language Proficiency Assessment. The Smarter Balanced Assessment is based on the Common Core state standards. Thus, the universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations that are appropriate for the Smarter Balanced Assessment may be different from those that states allowed in the past. For secure summative results, states can only make available the universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations that are included in the Smarter Balanced Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guidelines. A state may elect not to make available any support when the implementation is in conflict with the state's law, regulation, or policy. A link to the entire Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guidelines document is available on your screen. The figure shown on your screen portrays several aspects of the Smarter Balanced Assessment features. Universal tools, which are available for all students. Designated supports are available when indicated by an adult or a teen. And accommodations are available when the need is documented in an IEP or a 504 plan. The figure also portrays the additive and sequentially inclusive nature of these three aspects. Universal tools are available to all students, including those receiving designated supports and those receiving accommodations. Designated supports are available only to students for whom an adult or teen has indicated the need for them, as well as those students for whom the need is documented in a formal plan. Accommodations are available only to those students with documentation of the need through a formal plan such as an IEP or a 504. Students receiving accommodations also may use designated supports and universal tools. Also shown in the figure, for each category of assessment features, there exists both embedded and non-embedded versions of the tools, supports, or accommodations, depending on whether they are provided as digitally delivered components of the test administration system or separate from it. Embedded supports are supports that are digitally delivered components. They are part of the Smarter Balanced computer program. These supports must be identified and submitted for use at least 48 hours prior to the assessment administration. Non-embedded supports are supports that are not digitally delivered and would be separate from the test administration system. Non-embedded supports are provided outside the computer test administration system. These supports would be provided locally or within the building for each student's needs. Let's begin with universal tools. Universal tools are access features of the assessment that are available to all students, either provided as digitally delivered components of the test administration system, also known as embedded, or separate from the test administration system, which we call non-embedded. The next two slides describe the embedded universal tools available. Let's start with breaks. The number of items per session can be flexibly defined based on the student's need. Breaks of more than 20 minutes will prevent the student from returning to items already attempted by the student. There is no limit on the number of breaks that a student might be given. However, this universal tool may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. An embedded on-screen digital calculator can be accessed for calculator-allowed items when students click on the calculator button. This tool is available only with the specific items for which the Smarter Balanced item specifications indicated that it would be appropriate. Digital notepad. This tool is used for making notes about an item. The digital notepad is item-specific and is available through the end of the test segment. Notes are not saved when the student moves on to the next segment or after a break of more than 20 minutes. English dictionary. An English dictionary may be available for the full write portion of an ELA performance task. However, this is pending contractual discussions. A full write is the second part of a performance task. The use of this universal tool may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. English glossary. Grade and context-appropriate definitions of specific construct-irrelevant terms are shown in English on the screen via a pop-up window. The student can access the embedded glossary by clicking on any of the pre-selected terms. The use of this accommodation may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. Expandable passages. Each passage or stimulus can be expanded so that it takes up a larger portion of the screen. Global notes. Global Notes is a notepad that is available for ELA performance tasks in which the students complete a full write. A full write is the second part of a performance task. The student clicks on the notepad icon for the notepad to appear. During the ELA performance tasks, the notes are retained from segment to segment so that the student may go back to the notes even though the student is not able to go back to specific items in the previous segment. The highlighter is a digital tool for marking desired text, item questions, item answers, or parts of these with a color. Highlighted text remains available throughout each test segment. Keyboard navigation allows navigation throughout the text to be accomplished by using only the keyboard. Mark for Review allows students to flag items for future review during the assessment. Markings are not saved when a student moves on to the next segment or after a break of more than 20 minutes. Math tools. These digital tools, such as the embedded ruler and the embedded protractor, are used for measurements related to math items. They are available only with the specific items for which Smarter Balanced item specifications indicate that one or more of these tools would be appropriate. Spell check is a writing tool for checking the spelling of words in student-generated responses. Spell check only gives an indication that a word is misspelled. It does not provide the correct spelling. This tool is available only with the specific items for which the Smarter Balanced item specifications indicated that it would be appropriate. Spell check is bundled with other embedded writing tools for all performance task full writes. Strike through allows users to cross out answer options. If an answer option is an image, a strike through line will not appear, but the image will be grayed out. Selected writing tools are available for all student-generated responses. These tools include bold, italics, bullets, and undo or redo. The zoom tool is used for making text or other graphics in a window or frame appear larger on the screen. The default font size for all tests is 14 point. The student can make text and graphics larger by clicking the Zoom In button. A student can click the Zoom Out button to return to the default or smaller print size. When using the Zoom feature, the student only changes the size of the text and graphics on the current screen. Non-embedded universal tools are those provided outside the computer administration system. These tools are meant to be provided locally and can be made available to any student. Breaks may be given at predetermined intervals or after the completion of sections of the assessment for students taking the paper-based test. Sometimes students are allowed to take breaks when individually needed. This helps to reduce cognitive fatigue when they experience heavy assessment demands. The use of this tool may result in the student needing additional time. An English dictionary can be provided for the Fulbright portion of the ELA performance task. A thesaurus contains synonyms of terms while a student interacts with the text included in the assessment. Scratch paper may be made available to make notes, write computations, or record responses. Only plain paper or lined paper is appropriate for ELA. Graph paper is required beginning in 6th grade and can be used on all math assessments. All scratch paper must be collected and securely destroyed at the end of each computer adaptive test session in order to maintain test security. For math and ELA performance tasks, if a student needs to take the performance task in more than one session, scratch paper may be collected at the end of each session, stored securely, and then made available to the student at the next performance task testing session. Once the student completes the performance task, the scratch paper must be destroyed. In this next section, we'll discuss designated supports. Designated supports are features available for use by any student for whom the need has been indicated. Therefore, only some students will utilize this form of support. Scores achieved by students using designated supports will be included for federal accountability purposes. Ideally, decisions about designated supports are made by all educators familiar with the student's characteristics and needs, as well as those supports that the student has been using during regular instruction and for other assessments. Designated supports must be identified and submitted prior to the assessment administration. The process for doing this will be discussed at the end of this video. Designated supports are available to all students for whom the need has been indicated. Let's review the designated supports that are embedded or are within the digitally delivered portion of the assessment. Color contrast enables students to adjust screen background or font color based on needs or preferences. This may include reversing the colors for the entire interface or choosing the color of font and background. Students with attention difficulties may need this support for viewing test content. It may also be needed by some students with visual impairments or other print disabilities. Choice of colors should be informed by evidence that color selections meet student needs. Masking involves blocking off content that is not of immediate need or that may be distracting to the student. Students are able to focus their attention on a specific part of a test item by masking. Students with attention difficulties may need to mask content not of immediate need or that may be distracting during the assessment. This support also may be needed by students with print disabilities or visual impairments. Masking allows students to hide and reveal individual answer options as well as all navigational buttons and menus. In the text-to-speech support, text is read aloud to the student via embedded text-to-speech technology. The student is able to control the speed as well as raise or lower the volume of the voice via a volume control. Students who are struggling readers may need assistance accessing the assessment by having all or portions of the assessment read aloud. This support may be needed by students with reading-related disabilities or by students who are blind and do not yet have adequate Braille skills. This support will likely be confusing and may impede the performance of students who do not regularly have the support during instruction. Students who use text-to-speech will need headphones unless tested individually in a separate setting. Turning off any universal tools disables any tools that might be distracting, that students do not need to use, or those that they are unable to use. Students who are easily distracted may be overwhelmed by some of the universal tools. Knowing which specific tools may be distracting is important for determining which tools to turn off. Translated glossaries are a language support. The translated glossaries are provided for selected construct-irrelevant terms for math. Translations for these terms appear on the computer screen when students click on them. Students with a language glossary setting enabled can view the translated glossary. Students can also select the audio icon next to the glossary term and listen to the audio recording of the glossary. Students who have limited English language skills, whether or not designated as ELL, can use the translation glossary for specific items. The use of this support may result in the student needing additional overall time to complete the assessment. Translation of test directions is a language support available prior to beginning the actual test items. Students can see test directions in another language. Students who have limited English language skills can use the translated directions support. This support should only be used for students who are proficient readers in the other language and not proficient in English. Staffed translations provide the full translation of each test item above the original item in English. Students whose primary language is not English and who use dual language supports in the classroom may find the use of staffed translations appropriate. Students participate in the assessment regardless of the language. This support will increase reading load and cognitive load. The use of this support may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. Languages which these supports are available in include Spanish, Arabic, Cantonese, Filipino, Korean, Mandarin, Punjabi, Russian, Ukrainian, and Vietnamese. Some designated supports may need to be provided outside of the digitally delivered assessment. These supports are provided locally for students who are unable to use the designated supports when provided digitally. A bilingual dual language word-to-word dictionary is a language support. A bilingual dictionary can be provided for the full right portion of an ELA performance task. For students whose primary language is not English and who use dual language supports in the classroom, use of a bilingual dual language word-to-word dictionary may be appropriate. Students participate in the assessment regardless of the language. The use of this support may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. Color contrast allows test content of online items to be printed with different colors. Students with attention difficulties may need this support for viewing the test when digitally provided color contrasts do not meet their needs. Some students with visual impairments or other print disabilities also may need this support. Choice of colors should be informed by evidence that those colors meet student need. Color overlays are transparencies that may be placed over the paper-based assessment. Students with attention difficulties may need this support to view test content. This support also may be needed by some students with visual impairments or other print disabilities. Choice of color should be informed by evidence of those colors that meet the student's needs. Magnification allows the size of specific areas of the screen to be adjusted by the student with an assistive technology device. Magnification allows increasing the size to a level not provided for by the Zoom universal tool. Students used to viewing enlarged text, graphics, or navigation buttons may need magnification to comfortably view content. This support also may meet the needs of students with visual impairments and other print disabilities. The use of this designated support may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. Read Aloud is a designated support available for all math items and ELA items which are not reading passages. This support allows text to be read aloud to the student by a trained and qualified human reader who follows the administration guidelines provided by Smarter Balanced. All or portions of the content may be read aloud. Students who are struggling readers may need assistance accessing the assessment by having all or portions of the assessment read aloud. This support also may be needed by students with reading-related disabilities or by students who are blind and do not yet have adequate Braille skills. If Read Aloud is not used regularly during instruction, this support is likely to be confusing and may impede the performance on assessments. Readers should be provided to students on an individual basis, not to a group of students. A student should have the option of asking the reader to slow down or repeat text. The use of this support may result in the student needing additional overall time to complete the assessment. A scribe is available for ELA non-writing items and math items. This support allows students to dictate their responses to a human who records verbatim what they dictate. The scribe must be trained and qualified and must follow the administration guidelines provided by Smarter Balanced. Students who have documented significant motor or processing difficulties or who have had a recent injury, such as a broken arm or hand, which make it difficult to produce responses, may need to dictate their responses to a human, who then records the student's responses verbatim. The use of this support may result in the student needing additional time to complete the assessment. Separate setting allows test location to be altered so the student is tested in a setting different from that made available for most students. Students who are easily distracted in the presence of other students or may be distracting to others may need an alternate location to be able to take the assessment. The separate setting may be in a different room that allows them to work individually or among a smaller group, or it may be in the same room but in a specific location away from distractors. Some students may benefit from being in an environment that allows for movement, such as being able to walk around. Translated test directions are a PDF of directions translated in each of the languages currently supported. Those languages are noted at the bottom of your screen. A bilingual adult can read to the student. Students who have limited English language skills can use the translated test directions. In addition, a biliterate adult trained in the test administration manual can read the test directions to the student. Translated glossaries are a language support and are provided for selected construct-irrelevant terms for math. Glossary terms are listed by item and include the English term and its translated equivalent. Students who have limited English language skills can use the translation glossary for specific items. Accommodations are changes in procedures or materials that increase equitable access during the assessment. These accommodations provide valid assessment results for students who need them. It allows students to show what they know and can do. They are appropriate for a few students in our schools. Determination of accommodations each student will have must be identified prior to the test date by providing the information to the designated test coordinator in each school. For students on IEPs, accommodations must be appropriately entered into TINET by February 13th. Decisions about accommodations are made by IEP teams and teams of educators. Evidence must be provided of the need for accommodations in the IEP or the 504 plan. These accommodations are then documented in the IEP or the 504 plan. It is the responsibility of the team to ensure that the accommodations are given to the test coordinator in their school to be provided by the test date. The accommodations in the next few slides are available for those students for whom the accommodations are included on an IEP or a 504 plan. Test content is translated into an American Sign Language video. ASL Human Signer and the signed test content are viewed on the same screen. Students may view portions of the ASL video as often as needed. ASL is available for ELA listening items and math items. Some students who are deaf or hard of hearing and who typically use ASL may need this accommodation when accessing text-based content in the assessment. The use of this accommodation may result in the student needing additional time. Braille is a raised dot code that individuals read with the fingertips. Graphic material is presented in the raised format. Students with visual impairments may read text via Braille. Tactile overlays and graphics also may be used to assist the student in accessing content through touch. Refreshable Braille is available only for ELA. For math, Braille will be presented via embosser. Closed captioning is available for ELA listening items. Closed captioning allows printed text to appear on the computer screen as audio materials are presented. Students who are deaf or hard of hearing and who typically access information presented via audio by reading words that appear in synchrony with the audio presentation may need this support to access audio content. Text-to-speech is an accommodation available for ELA reading passages. Text is read aloud to the student through the embedded text-to-speech technology. The student is able to control the speed as well as raise or lower the volume of the voice via a volume control. This accommodation is appropriate for a very small number of students. Approximately 1 to 2% of students with disabilities participating in the general assessment. For students in grades 3 through 5, text-to-speech will not be an available accommodation. For students in grades 6 through 8 and 11, text-to-speech is available as an accommodation for students whose need is documented in an IEP or 504 plan. It is imperative that students using text-to-speech have previous experience with this accommodation in their day-to-day instruction or other assessments. An abacus is a tool that may be used in place of scratch paper for students who typically use this accommodation. Alternate response options include, but are not limited to, adapted keyboards, large keyboards, sticky keys, mouse keys, filter keys, adapted mouse, touchscreen, head wand, and switches. Students with some physical disabilities may need to use the alternate response options accommodation. Some alternate response options are external devices that must be plugged in and be compatible with the assessment delivery platform. A non-embedded calculator may be used for calculator-allowed items only. In this case, students needing a special calculator, such as a Braille calculator or a talking calculator, which are currently unavailable within the assessment platform, may be used. Test administrators should ensure that the calculator is available only for designated calculator items. A multiplication table may be made available to students in grade 4 and above for math items. This paper-based single-digit multiplication table will be made available from Smarter Balanced for students with a documented and persistent calculation disability. Print on demand refers to the option of providing paper copies of either the passages, stimuli, or items to students. For those students needing a paper copy, permission must first be obtained. For the accommodation known as a scribe, students dictate their responses to a human who records verbatim what they dictate. The scribe must be trained and qualified and must follow the administration guidelines provided by Smarter Balanced. Students who have documented significant motor or processing difficulties or who have had a recent injury that makes it difficult to produce responses may need to dictate their responses to a human who then records the student's responses verbatim. The use of this accommodation may result in the student needing additional time. The Read Aloud accommodation is available for ELA reading passages in grades 6 through 8 and 11, as well as for students who are blind in grades 3 through 8 and 11 who do not yet have adequate Braille skills. For this accommodation, text is read aloud to the student by a trained and qualified human reader who follows the administration guidelines provided by Smarter Balanced. All or portions of the content may be read aloud. This accommodation is appropriate for a very small number of students. For students in grades 3 through 5, read aloud will not be an available accommodation. For students in grades 6 through 8 and 11, read aloud is available as an accommodation for students whose need is documented in an IEP or 504 plan. Readers should be provided to students on an individual basis, not to a group of students. A student should have the option of asking a reader to slow down or repeat text. In the speech-to-text accommodation, voice recognition allows students to use their voices as input devices to the computer to dictate responses or give commands. Voice recognition software generally can recognize speech up to 160 words per minute. Students may use their own assistive technology devices. Students who have motor or processing disabilities or who have had a recent injury that make it difficult to produce text or commands using keyboards may need alternative ways to work with computers. Students will need to be familiar with the software and have had many opportunities to use it prior to testing. Speech-to-text software requires that the student go back through all generated text to correct errors in transcription, including use of writing conventions. Thus, prior experience with this accommodation is essential. If students use their own assistive technology devices, all assessment content should be deleted from these devices after the test for security purposes. For many of these students, using voice recognition software is the only way to demonstrate their composition skills. Still, use of speech-to-text does require that students know writing conventions and that they have the review and editing skills required of students who enter text via the computer keyboard. It is important that students who use speech-to-text also be able to develop planning notes via speech-to-text and to view what they produce while composing via speech-to-text. Available for you on the NDSA site in the Hub are all of the universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations in the respective documents. You may find these documents a helpful reference when your building teams are determining necessary supports for students. In addition, this summary screen may be beneficial when determining which, if any, support will be declared for students at your school. Each child needing one or more designated supports or accommodations must have a designated supports form submitted. The only exception to this is for students who are on IEPs. Case managers will indicate the supports and accommodations needed within TINET and should not be duplicated on a designated supports form. The supports and accommodations information provided in TINET will be exported to the Smarter Balanced system. It is important for IEP teams to ensure the accommodations section within TINET is accurate for the child's assessment needs prior to Friday, February 13th. The designated supports form can be found by logging into the hub and selecting NDSA within Workspaces. After finding your way to the NDSA site, under Links, select NDSA Designated Supports Form. One NDSA Designated Supports and Accommodations form must be completed for each student needing supports. All forms must be submitted by Friday, February 13th. Begin by entering the student's Fargo Public Schools student ID. Next, you're required to enter the student's first and last name. Select the student's school. Mark any checkboxes that should be provided to the student for designated supports or accommodations. While all sections turn on supports, this section will turn off any universal tools checked. If you wish to keep all universal tools active, do not mark anything. After all of the appropriate selections are made, send a copy of the responses to yourself by marking this box, and then select Submit. Confirmation of your submission will appear, and you may edit your previous response or submit a form for another student. Again, all forms must be submitted by Friday, February 13th.